Hello, welcome to Lost Movie Madness with Akeem and friends. We love you, Akeem. Oh, we love you, Akeem. Oh, we love you, Akeem. That's me. I'm Akeem, and welcome to Lost Movie Madness, as I said before. Today, I will be talking about the movie The Kid with the Golden Arm. If you like what you see or hear, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button on your YouTube. Leave me a 5-star review on whatever podcatcher that you're listening to this on. And if you want to get in touch, please email me at lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. Again, that's lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. I would love to have any movie suggestions, or if you would like to be on the podcast, we can watch a movie and talk about it for about a half hour. So please email me there and watch any of the other videos that I have up. I will be posting more. Now, today we will be talking about that movie, The Kid with the Golden Arm. And as you can see, and for those who aren't watching, YouTube has sent me several messages about using copyrighted material. So I am trying a new experiment today. Today, I created a cartoon, an animation made by Animaker, if anybody can see this on YouTube. And it's supposed to represent what happens in the movie. It really doesn't that well because fighting isn't necessarily one of the things that that software allows me to do. But this is a work in progress, so I am continuing to work on this and trying to do better. And as it says, The Kid with the Golden Arm. I'm very proud of this animation, although visually it doesn't make any sense. I'm still trying my best to bring good content, at least have a visual other than just me talking. There are a couple videos on here of me talking, and I'm not super excited about that. I mean, I think I look good, but, that's neither here nor there. For those who are listening, just ignore the first 2 minutes of this thing. And we're going to get into this. Welcome to the Recovery House Studios. As I said, my name is Akeem, and I'm sitting in my room, and I'm in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's the sounds of The Kid with the Golden Arm. Now, The Kid with the Golden Arm, I watched about a month ago. I watched it about 4 times. And as I was working on the animation, trying to upgrade this podcast, I like to keep the movie fresh in my mind. I like to be able to think about what it means and what it's about. As a matter of fact, yesterday I watched a documentary about the Hong Kong kung fu movies of the 70s and 80s and what kung fu movies have progressed to at this point. So I didn't really have an understanding of it, and now I do have a much better understanding of what they were trying to do. I did learn a lot of things. Now, The Kid with the Golden Arm, and I talked about the Crippled Avengers a couple weeks ago, but The Kid with the Golden Arm is another one of the Shaw Brothers films. Now, Shaw Brothers, for those who don't know, the Shaw Brothers was the biggest movie studio in Hong Kong in the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s, and then they moved to television. But before then, they made love movies, they made spy movies, and they would just crank these things out. And you can see that in a lot of their movies because, and I'm watching the movie, that's why I keep looking to my right. You can see that in a lot of their movies because they use a lot of the same characters, the same actors, I should say. It's like a repertory group. You see just the same actors, dressed up a little bit differently, playing different characters. But they're sort of utility infielders. You can put them wherever, and they'll do the job. They may not be the greatest actors in the world, although some of the kung fu in this thing is amazing. Now, into the movie. Let's forget all that. Let's get into the movie. The movie, what happens is there is a famine-stricken area. Simple. And sometime in medieval China. And the government has one of its officers trying to take some gold to the famine-stricken area so that the people there can buy some grain and they can eat. Simple enough plot. But when when they meet up in the very beginning, I like that fighting animation, looks good. When the gold, they're supposed to be, the guys who are supposed to be transporting the gold are supposed to be met by this government agent named Hai To. and these two other agents, a lady and Mr. Lee. And so when they meet up, they're the people who are escorting. They're about 30 men with two government agents, and they get a message from the Cheesaw Gang. Now the Cheesaw Gang. Let's go through who the Cheesaw Gang is. The Cheesaw Gang has a bunch of underlings, like what is it? Avengers villain. Just a bunch of underlings who are just cannon fodder, nameless, faceless. But there are four chiefs of the Cheesaw Gang. Number 4 is a guy named called Brass Head. And you get to see a great martial arts exhibition at the beginning, and you see them fighting, and the guy Brass Head has this sort of face front helmet thing, and it's sort of golden, but it's brass, and apparently he's good at headbutting people. Okay, so you can see why he's number 4. I mean, let's just be serious about that. He headbutts people. It's a talent. He's better than cannon fodder, but he's number 4. Number 3 is Iron Robe. Now, Iron Robe is really cool because Iron Robe, it's not all iron, like, but he's got these little pellets, not pellet, but little plates sewed onto this robe, and he fights with a fan, an iron fan. His skill set is really nice. I mean, he's protected from any body shots, although, let's face it. I mean, when I think about it, and we talk about, I listen to and watch a lot of history information, you would think that most people in history would have some sort of armor, but medieval history, ancient history, a lot of times, the guys who were fighting in battles were fighting in toughened leather or heavy buff coats, which is just a bunch of wool. They didn't have like metal armor because metal armor was super expensive. So this guy wearing this gown with metal studs makes sense. Not to the Western eye, because the Western eye is so used to wearing, people riding in medieval steeds and everything's covered in metal. But the foot soldier himself never really had, the sort of big metal armor. So he's wearing that, and he's got a fan. So he fights with the fan. He does some really great work with that. Number 2 is a Silver Spear. Now, Silver Spear is good with spear. That's his thing. I don't know why he's particularly special, but he's good with spear. And number 1 is Golden Arm. Now, Golden Arm, I've seen in a bunch of Shaw films. He, not great with facial expression, but his kung fu is ridiculous. It is. It's on point. And the fact that he's Golden Arm, he's dressed in a gold outfit, and he is able to use his arms. His arms are impervious to metal. The rest of his body ain't, but his arms are. And now I'm going too deep in the weeds. So, I'm watching the end of it, and at this point, Golden Arm is fighting the great swordsman, and the guy hits his arm with the sword, Golden Arm then wraps the sword around his arm, and you can see it when it unravels. It's actually plastic or whatever. It's great. It's a great scene. And then he kills the swordsman. Okay, so that's what happens. So we're on a road trip. We're trying to protect the gold. And we're supposed to be met up with these government agents. There are also 2 other government agents. There's a guy with a spear and a guy called Long Axe, Short Axe. They were in the Crippled Avengers too. They're really good with their kung fu. So they start out, and one by one, the protectors start dropping. The Cheesaw attack them. The first guy. And it's great because it's a bit like a comic book, not a comic book, a video game sort of thing. So you start with number 4. Brass Hat shows up and he steals the gold. Boom. But Brass Hat dies. Brass Hat's gone. First scene, he tells Golden Arm to please avenge him. And Golden Arm says he was. And Golden Arm comes through and he starts chopping everybody, and nobody can defeat him. Haito hasn't showed up yet, but nobody can defeat him. And he was supposed to. He starts to wonder as he's walking about, like, why the one government agent who's supposed to be great with his sword, isn't really good with his sword. So he starts wondering about that, but that'll come back in the end. So Golden Arm and his men, the rest of the men, they steal the gold, and Golden Arm walks off, which is a bit strange to me because I've never known people who are involved in certain lifestyles to be okay with their underlings taking their money. Because if you've taken somebody's stuff, you kind of believe that other people will take your stuff at that point. But Golden Arm lets the guys run off. I guess he figures he's got the golden arms, and if you mess with him, it's a wrap. It's a done dizzle. So why worry about it? And he'll catch up with whoever. So Brass Hat dies, and during the fight, Mr. Liu and he gets hit with Sandy Palm. Sandy Palm also dies, which he's never ranked him on. He guess he would be number 5, but he gets punched through a wall, and you really don't get to know him, so we don't get an intro into Sandy Palm. But Sandy Palm's got poison in his hand. Mr. Liu, the fighter, he is poisoned, and he's got this young lady with him. Also, the only female in the film. Not really sure I'm super happy about only one female in the film. I think that, his Miss Lang Fang is her name. The Yang hires Mr. Lee Chun, who is I'm sorry, I'm looking at Wiki because I can't keep all the names straight in my head. But Mr. Lee and his girlfriend, Miss Chun, I watched the animation. It's great. Mr. Lee and Miss Chun, he's with her, and he's like, I gotta go find he's poisoned. He's like, I gotta go find Golden Arm, and she's like, you're gonna die. And he's like, oh, who said I was ever afraid of God? And this guy, it's full of a lot of crap. Like all he cares about is his honor, and he doesn't really care about her very much. But he starts to die. And that's when they meet Haito. Now, Haito is a drunk. Haito always has a big jug of wine with him, and he drinks that throughout. Now, his martial arts isn't drunken, like the Drunken Master or anything like that, but you find out that the alcohol saves him in several different ways. So anyway, we're getting bogged down. We're getting bogged down in the minutia. So Haito finds him. He throws Mr. Lee into his oven, has these men stoke it, and they roast him for an hour, and he sweats out the poison. And she thinks, well, you're trying to kill him, but he defeats her very easily. So she's not really much of a character. She's a love interest. This is her talking to Haito right now. And he's like, he can't help because he's drunk. And then she's so mad she gets steamed up. That's the visual I'm giving you there. So they continue, and then they get ambushed again. And the gold, Haito catches up with the gold, and he fights Iron Robe. And he outsmarts Iron Robe, because Iron Robe's kind of beating him. He outsmarts him. He jumps over the cart. Now, this is one of those ancient carts, about 10 feet tall. He jumps over the cart, which, by the way, he couldn't do. And Iron Robe jumps after him, and he catches a spear in his groin. That happens. He definitely catches a spear in his groin, and you can see the blood run, and he's dead. And Haito has killed about 7 dudes. Now, as they're walking along with the escort, Little Axe and Big Axe and his brother, I can't remember because they're not really that important to the story, they have a competition who they're going to kill. They go ahead, and you got that little love story, you got the fighting to get to where they go. Now, along the way, there are a lot of booby traps set up, which didn't really make any sense. Like, they catch up with the gold after Golden Arm catches up. He sees that everybody's dead. He doesn't apparently want to take the gold for himself, so he goes ahead and leaves the gold and lets them continue to escort it. And as they're doing it, everybody starts to die. There are a bunch of booby traps, so some of the men start to die, and they have to be careful. So they end up staying in this little town where there are a bunch of booby traps, apparently set up by the Chesaw gang, but it's not really clear. There's a bunch of poison, a bunch of more of the guys die, and we're not sure. Now that's the four members they're going, and that's them walking to carry the gold. I couldn't make it hard. I couldn't do it. So anyway, they start going, and people just keep dying. So finally, they get to Silver Spear, and Silver Spear ends up throwing some metal darts and tubes that don't look great, but it's a low budget Hong Kong kung fu flick. So he throws those darts, and he kills the one brother, and then there's a great kung fu fight where they kill the short axe, long axe. Him and Silver Spear both stab each other in the chest with spears. They walk through it, and then they collapse and die. So the only one of the Chesaw gang left is Golden Arm. And Haito is still killing and murdering people, and Mr. Liu and the girl. So Mr. Liu catches up. They separate. Mr. Liu catches up with Golden Arm. And Golden Arm kills Mr. Liu pretty easy. They said he wraps the thing around him and then skewers him. And the sword is twisted. And he skewers him in the stomach and starts to twist the sword. It's really, really a funny scene. He pulls it out, and they start to fight. So anyway, we get to the end, and Haito catches up with Golden Arm. Golden Arm has the gold, and they're fighting. It's a great fight, and Haito ends up spitting wine into Golden Arm's eyes. Now I don't know what type of wine this is, but it blinds Golden Arm. It blinds him. It's a weird set of blinding. I don't really get how the guy ends up being blind from wine, but he does. We're going to suspend our disbelief. We're going to go, okay, just regular old wine can blind you. Sure. I don't know how, but it can. And, that happens. And then, as they're fighting, let's see. The one guy who brings all these people together, which again, if you're committing a crime, the last thing you want to do is bring in guys who are capable. Bring in guys who have reputations who aren't any good or anything like that. But don't bring capable people in, because they'll catch up with you. They'll figure out. You see it in movies all the time. Why bring in Hercule Poirot and then try to figure out whether or not you can. By the way, anybody who doesn't know who Hercule Poirot is, a great Belgian detective, Agatha Christie mysteries. But why bring him in to? It may be a brilliant plan, and I know he can be your alibi, but the danger is, the risk reward level is pretty damn low. You want to bring somebody else incapable. You want to bring in Inspector Clouseau. Even then, you got to be careful with Inspector Clouseau. Inspector Clouseau, for anybody who doesn't know who Inspector Clouseau is the bumbling French inspector from the Pink Panther films, who's great in them, but can't figure out anything, but he just falls into whatever solutions that he ends up getting. But anyway, finally, the two guys who had started off the journey and sent everybody to take the gold reveal themselves. And the swordsman ends up being this guy named Iron Feet. He's not great with a sword. He had a reputation a few years back, but he disappeared. And it turns out he's great with kicking. So while Haito is talking to him, his accomplice comes and tries to kill Haito with this big sword with the rings on it. Now, by the way, I did some research with the swords and the rings. big ceremonial swords with rings on the back. And I was like, why would you want rings? I don't really get what those things are for. One, the the rings on the back help balance the sword as it moves through the air. It adds weight. Now they're used for intimidation. They're also used for execution, but they're not really army swords because how would you put it in a scabbard? But they're really intimidating. They're big, broad swords, and they've got the rings on. They look super cool, but they're not something that you would take onto the field like a gladius, the Roman short sword that they used to conquer the Mediterranean. So you wouldn't use it that way. Plus, again, it takes extra work, and when you're arming an army, you don't want to have your blacksmiths or whatever doing extra work and making each sword more expensive. You want cost effective, hopefully good. Maybe not. It depends on how you feel about your foot soldiers, because they're going to have to carry these things. If you give them a sword, sometimes in ancient battles they use scythes, they use whatever, use mallets. Although I will say this, having learned a lot about history in my time, swords are great, but compression weapons are really the star of the show. Yeah, I can stab you, but I might not hit anything vital. If I crush your arm with a mace or a mallet or something like that, then I've done something. But that puts you out. You're down. You're not only down today, but you're down for a long period of time, and that thing may never work again. Also, crush your skull. You know, I got you wandering around within your own men, and you're probably going to die anyway. So anyway, he turns out to be a bad guy. He tries to kill. He has his accomplice try to kill Haito, and he slices him with that big sword. And you see the liquid gushing, and you're like, "Oh man, Haito's dead." Although you know Haito can't be dead. And Haito lays down. He kills his accomplice. Iron Feet kills his accomplice, and he has to fight Golden Arm. Now, Golden Arm, his kung fu is amazing. His kung fu is on point. He can't see though, so he starts to fight Iron Feet. And he's getting the best of Iron Feet because he can hear Iron Feet. You can see the ears moving as he listens for Iron Feet. I can't move my ears independently, but the ears move. I can do this sort of thing. But the guy maybe that's why he got the part. So anyway, Iron Feet realizes this and starts quietly kicking Golden Arm's ass. And then Haito jumps back in the middle of that fight, and Haito had been sliced by the big sword, and you're like, oh, how did he do it? And it turns out he had a wineskin underneath his arm, in his gi, and he pulls it out, and that was sliced rather than himself. Although, why he falls back, I don't know. Why he lays there for a while, I don't know, other than the Kung Fu exhibition that they're putting on, because it is an exhibition. The Kung Fu is amazing. So Haito ends up taking off his shirt, which I get is a thing in these movies. People get all glistening and shirtless, which not particularly my taste, but is a thing. There's no shame in that. Young men slapping man meat. That's what's happening. And they end up fighting, and of course Haito ends up beating Iron Foot. He ends up killing him. I believe he punches him through the chest. And Iron Feet is defeated, and Golden Arm says, well, I'm blind now. I guess I'll go live quietly. And he thanks Haito for not killing him. And as he's about to turn away, the young lady right there, look at that timing. She stabs him in the back. And you see the sword go through his stomach, and it comes out. And no, I'm sorry. Golden Arm is the one who kills Iron Feet. He hears him coming, and he sticks his arm through his body. I just saw it. I forgot who killed him. And Golden Arm is, he gets stabbed in his back, and he's standing there, and he's like, "This is the best." And then he pulls himself with the sword. He dies, and he does a big arm windmill. It's great. It is great. And this is him dying because the angry girl has come and killed him. She has stabbed him right through the back. That's what he did. He broke the sword off and he said, "This is the best." And he comes off and he flails his arms and he dies. And that's it for the golden arm. And that's essentially it for the movie. That's it. It's all done. This is the best. And the spurt of the blood and the death scene is amazing. And he dies, and they leave the bodies, and they walk off together. That's it. That's the end of the movie. Now, we're going to talk about several things in this movie. The acting. The acting's good. I mean, it is what it is. The guys aren't going for high art. They're not trying to make Macbeth or Hamlet. They're making a movie. It's a bit nonsensical. Although, when I was watching that documentary on Hong Kong films, the dubs, because I mean, I could have read this. Like, I watched a movie called Red Cliffs recently, which is a movie about the Battle of Red Cliffs versus it's a history movie. It's a lot of kung fu in it. Cao Cao and Liu Bei, they fight over China. It's great. I could have read it, and that's actually what's said in the movie. Is actually what's going on the screen. But when I watched that documentary, it said, a lot of guys, when they dubbed these films, they weren't actually, they weren't actually following what was actually said. They were saying whatever they thought it was good for the story, which puts a little color onto it. I don't think it matters very much. It makes sense visually. Just like my animation makes sense visually, I think. And that's it. That's all they're doing. They're sort of making it up and making a good story as best as they can. So the acting is good. Um, the story makes sense. As you're going through, there's no hint that the guys who started off the journey are the guys who are doing the booby traps ahead. Also, how would they do the booby traps ahead? It's ancient China, so that level of movement doesn't really make any sense. But the story makes sense. It's a linear progression. You beat all the bad guys and you get to the top bad guy, and he, even though he's blind, is almost impossible to beat. He does get beaten and he ends up dying, so he gets his comeuppance because he kills a lot of guys. Although he's not as responsible for so many deaths as you would think, because Iron Feet is the one who's responsible. So there's that. Now the pacing. It moves along. It beats along. It bumps. Boom, 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 boom. You're not bored. You can tell what's happening. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't make you go, oh, well, I don't know what's happening in this thing. Now, the pacing goes along. It keeps your interest. The cinematography. Now, this is another Shaw Brothers film, so it's shot on the soundstage. There's no question it's shot on the soundstage. Their sets, like that right there at the beginning, they're fighting on sets. No question about it. There's no great big cinematic scenes. You're just going along on sound sets. But I will say this about cinematography. A lot of the fight scenes, you can tell that they are sped up to maybe 1 1/8, 1 1/4 speed. So it looks a bit like those great Buster Keaton films from the 1920s or anything like that, where it just sped up. Although it's not sped up to like 1 1/2, 1 3/4. So you can tell it visually, but if you're not really paying attention, you don't really notice that it's sped up so quickly. But the speed of the kung fu, although the kung fu is good, you can tell that they sped it up about 1/4 to make it a little bit more exciting and to have knitted together the scenes better. But it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the film. It really doesn't. I watched it a couple times before I really noticed. I wasn't paying that much attention the first time, but the second time I said, oh, they've sped that up. Especially the fight with Iron Robe. Iron Robe fight is definitely sped up. You can tell that, along with the jumps and everything. But it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the film. Now, the entertainment value. Is it entertaining? Yes. I mean, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was worth watching. I thought that in the end, I could watch it, I could enjoy it. I shared it with a couple friends of mine, and they enjoyed it. So I would definitely say it was worth watching. Would I recommend the film? Yeah, yeah. Just know what you're going into. You're going into a fun kung fu flick. That's it. Is there anything great or exciting about it? Not particularly. Actually, it's very exciting, but is it breaking anything that you haven't seen? No. We've seen The Matrix, we've seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, so it's not anything new, but it's exciting and it's enjoyable. I would indeed recommend it. Although I will say, as I always say, watch if you want. Don't blame me if you do. You can find me on Twitter at lostmoviemadness.com, and that's a film. That's it. We're done talking about The Kid with the Golden Arm. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. Add me on YouTube. Please leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Please leave a comment on whatever podcast you're listening to. Please, if you have any questions or if you want to talk about any films, you want me to watch any films and talk about them, email me at lostmoviemadness.com. I'm sorry, lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. Again, that's lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. I will respond to any email that I get. I really do enjoy making these videos, and I know that people are watching and people are listening to them. So please leave me a message and get in contact. If not, please just leave a thumbs up or a 5-star review on whatever podcast you're listening to this on. And I will talk to you later. Again, I will be posting this on Twitter as I post all my episodes on Twitter. Watch if you want. Don't blame me if you do.